Robert, thank you so much for being on the show. It's
Adam,
great to have
thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. I think the situation where we are right now with travel coming back and getting into a discussion about the changing needs of customers, what customer service looks like as we're sort of moving into whatever this new normal is here, at least through the summer, right? It's something that's been on my mind a lot and a lot of conversations I've been having offline. So I'm excited to have you on today to dive into this a little bit, hopefully give people a bit of a roadmap on what to expect. But before we get too deep into that, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself? What's your connection to
Sure,
the
Adam.
industry?
Well, I am a guest experience expert and I specialize in the luxury hotels and resorts industry. So I've helped luxury service leaders build guest loyalty through personalized, authentic guest service. I've over, from the last time I counted, I have over 30 years of primarily hotel experience, and I've built teams that align with high-end customers and service cultures, and I've worked with prestigious brands like Montage International, Marriott, and various resorts, just to name a few. And I've also guided small one-location teams, as well as large multi-site teams, driving cross-functional collaboration throughout the entire customer satisfaction journey.
30 years is quite an
It is.
accomplishment.
I think I've worn every imaginable hat you could wear from the ground
Yeah.
up, which is
Yeah, there's no
important
doubt
when
in
you're
my
leading
mind.
teams.
It is. Yeah. I mean, this September is always my yearly marker for being in the industry. So this September coming up will be 26 years for me, which is, I mean, it's gone lightning
Congratulations! That
fast.
is such an
Yeah. Oh,
accomplishment.
thank you. It's great, but you're right. I mean, wearing a lot of hats all the way up, really important if you're going to lead a team, especially when you're in operations, because knowing what they go
Right.
through, right, on
No,
a
it
day-to-day
absolutely
basis
does,
is.
Adam. I think that the one word I always share with not only myself but other leaders and other people in the industry, especially if you're trying to get into the industry, is to be passionate but be humble. And humility is important to know as well. I think that it really shapes your success for not just the short term, but the long term. I remember a general manager telling me, said, what's my next move? And he said, just remember, it's not a race, it's a journey. And I think that's so important to remember through people's career. You don't just hit a switch and you're in the position you want to be. I think you're learning all the important roles, from a front desk agent to a house person or a housekeeper, the frontline positions where you're really going to be in front of the guest day in, day out is so important.
I had a very similar conversation several times throughout my career. Slow down. You're right. It is a journey, but we're just so conditioned and so focused, especially, I mean, across every tier in hotels, there's no doubt, but in the luxury tier where I've spent my career, it's a particularly arduous climb through the ranks. Because I mean, not only do you take a lot of, you do get steps forward, but there's a lot of lateral moves. There's a lot of maybe one or two positions down, but it's all in an effort to try to help you develop a set of skills and a bandwidth of being able to understand what's going on within oftentimes a very complex hotel, and being able to keep those plates spinning, as it were, like kind of the old style circus metaphor.
I agree with you.
Tell me a little bit about the employee voice. So it is something that I know that we talked about this offline. It's a big message of yours in when you talk with a lot of your clients. What's your perspective on this within the hotel industry? And maybe, as we're starting to come back, has it gained in importance, or are there other things that are maybe more important in today's?
It's such a great question. The employee voice, it's always going to be important. I mean, it was important before COVID, and it's certainly more important now, the employee voice. I mean, the employee voice, to me, it's defined as the opportunity for employees to express their concerns about their policies in the workplace and offer ideas about how to improve conditions in the workplace as well. So, to like how do you really empower those employees to align with to improve the service culture? You need to know, what the company culture means, and I think that's so important to know that.
Yeah, there's no doubt. What are some of the hurdles that you've seen with respect to this? In your own career too. I mean, maybe some learnings after the fact. Monday morning quarterbacking it. This is something I know from experience that is talked about a lot, but the practical application of it always seems to like fall a little bit short.
Sure, I think the one of the challenges is when hiring managers bring people on, they're making sure it's a cultural fit, and they're not just hiring the skill set, but they're looking at the whole person to bring them on. And I think that's so important because it's your journey. It's a partnership when you start a position. I mean, when I started my last few positions in several companies, I always wanted to make sure that I had a voice, and that the leadership were receptive to that. They were really listening, and they wanted, if there needed to be change. I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. However, at the same time, keeping an open mind to change and pivot, and evolving if there was a need. So that I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, it comes back down to, I suppose, when you start a new position in a company, and I know there's a lot of people doing this right now, embracing the culture, what the brand stands for, a lot of the, not just service elements, but like every company's got kind of a certain way of looking at the world. And if you want to be successful with that brand, a lot of that has to do with how well you integrate into that that view of the world. But at the same time, I think you're spot on here with your point about being able to have some influence within your specific hotel. If you're working for a Marriott brand, you're probably not going to have a lot of influence at the larger Marriott umbrella, but you can definitely influence the culture within your own individual hotel, and that's pretty powerful.
And I also believe that your associates, and I've said this before, and I've made it very clear with my mindset when I work with teams, that your front line has more power than they think, and allowing them to have that voice and to collaborate with you, it really helps and shapes that culture that you're looking for to be successful.
Yeah, and an offshoot of the overall culture, the corporate culture within a property, is the service culture in the hotel. And you, at a high level, one may think that those are the same thing, but they really aren't. They're kind of two distinct elements that kind of give a property some soul or some feeling behind it. How do you empower employees to align and improve service culture within a hotel? Because it kind of comes back to this initial point about being able to have influence in your property. So how do you do that?
I think there's a few steps that you want to do when you're empowering employees. You want to be transparent, and it's important to keep people informed about changes in the organization, those that you've already implemented and those being considered to be implemented. So I think that's important. And you really need to trust your employees. I think trust is a word that we use quite often, but do you really trust your employees, and your employees trust you as well?
Man, that's a deep well. the trust conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, because so many things can go to, and I mean, you're right, it ties back to communication, but so many things can go to ruin that trust on both ends. Right. Being inauthentic with communication, or not even that, maybe unintentionally not communicating important things that impact people's ability to do their job, either daily or, I mean, thinking back to when the pandemic started, whether or not people were going to have jobs or not, and not just going in on Tuesday morning and finding out people were furloughed. Clearly, there was knowledge that was going to happen on Tuesday, so maybe give people a heads up, right? But at the same time, it's a two-way street. Employees, you have to have to conduct yourself with honesty and integrity, and really look out for the best interests of the organization. If you want, you have to give your boss something to trust, I guess, is where I'm
and
going.
your employees,
Right? And that's
right. And
critical.
I believe your employees, can be trusted to support change when they understand what's going on behind the scenes. And that's so important. I think a lot of leaders don't communicate effectively that way, but but most of them do. But it's just something to be known.
As part of service culture, and I'm sure everybody listening right now, yourself too, has experienced something where you go into any business, not just a hotel, and it's very clear that the person behind the counter or doing the thing that you're there to get done is going through the motions, and they might be hitting a mental checklist of steps that need to happen within an interaction, but it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel natural, right? If as a manager within a hotel, it can be very hard to take a 10,000-foot view of perhaps your department and critically look at it and know whether or not you're providing that authentic service, because that's the differentiator between good hotels and great hotels. So how do you know if service at a property is authentic? What's the
Well,
steps
I think
there?
it's a calling. It's rarely ever easy, but it looks effortless. I mean, it's that feeling to serve, and it's often dictated by impulsive highs that rapidly fade. So I think that's important to know. And I call it the unexpected delights. So I think that's important to know, because when if you have a guest in front of you and they're coming in with luggage, and without them asking, you're already rushing over to them or getting assistance to help them with luggage. And that's really an unexpected delight that most guests love to see. And that's authentic because it shows that you really are passionate and you care about the guest.
Yeah. It's more about emotionally connecting
Correct.
with people rather than just robotically going
Right.
through a set of company standards. That's, whether it's interaction, whether it's, how quickly you greet somebody, whether it's where the flowers are placed on the table in the lobby. I mean, those are important. It's not to discount those things, because those systems and processes are the things that engage the five senses that I think we can get into that. And people who've listened to the show have heard me talk about it before, but the five senses are so important to engage at a property in a balanced manner, and systems and processes help you do that. But there's something else, and it's that, like, making people feel like maybe they're the only guests there.
Right. You certainly want to make them feel special. And, if you were a guest in my home, I wouldn't wait for you to ring the doorbell. I'm going to find out more about you and what you like, to personalize that experience so it's a caring and a memorable experience that you're going to remember. So when you come back, that you're going to say, I'm coming back and here's why. It's because of what you did. And, that is rewarding in itself to hear language like that. But, it's never going to be transactional. And it's certainly, building and creating a relationship with that guest, even if it's for a minute or two. But again, you're building a relationship, hopefully for life, that your guest becomes a promoter of your brand.
Yeah. I remember back early days when mobile technology was starting to be introduced into the operation. And this, I'm dating myself a little bit here, but we didn't have iPads yet for check-in in hotels. There was a point where that, actually a lot of hotels still don't, but like this was in early days when iPads, I think we were like version 1 or 2 of that hardware. But we were trying to figure out a way to remove the front desk in a luxury hotel. And how did we do this in a way that was that maintains ease of use for the employees, but it improved the experience for the guest? And one of the monikers that we started talking about, or we started to kind of promote, was that we were getting away from a face-to-face traditional interaction and going more hip to hip. So you're with the guest. You're not a person who they go to when they need something. There's something about how that is framed and in the image of that, but also in the application of it, that was pretty powerful. And actually, that hotel we used JD Power as a ranking system for the company, and we shot way up in our overall rankings within the organization, just because of that style of training. So I think it's a great example of what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit about your views on the front line being the bottom line. What do you mean when you say that?
Well, I think your front line is your bottom line, because they're going to be with the guests day in, day out. They're the first person they see and the last person they see, generally. And when there's a problem, it's the first contact they have with that person. So I think it's important that they can make or break your brand on how they respond. And it's so important. I know there's been a shift in the training development a little more, and I think on how to work with your associates who are now directly working with your guests day in, day out to make that experience memorable. So that's what I mean by front line is your bottom line.
Yeah. Is there any messaging that you give to department managers or associates on the front line that kind of gives them some purpose behind that, to help them maybe understand how what they do every day fits into the broader context of what the property might be trying
I
to
think
deliver?
by explaining them not just what their job function is, but how they make a difference and their purpose of why they're there, and then bringing in the training development of what's important to them, and making sure that they understand it. So not only they are following your culture, but more importantly, they're creating their own destiny with the guest and creating their own relationships. It's just more about being themselves and being authentic that way. Because I think it's one thing to be scripted, but it's another when you are speaking from your heart, that you really care about that individual. So I think the messages are important to share with your associates.
Yeah, I guess that adds to the authentic level of service. It helps in fulfillment in what you do every day. I mean, there's a lot of benefits there. There's no doubt. Offline, before we started this, we were talking about vacation rentals, and I'm curious to get your. I think this is. I mean, I've done shows about this. This is a fascinating part in evolution within the hotel industry at large, that I've personally become very involved in. I think that side of the industry is going to drive a lot of the maybe technology adoption and service application at a larger scale here. Have you talked with any clients about the vacation rental impact on their properties, and if there's anything that they can do from a service perspective to I don't want to say combat that, because I don't want it to seem adversarial, but that's the view in the industry right now. So what are you hearing anything out there?
So I'm hearing a little. I mean, I have spoken to various owners and property owners that try to say, well, how do I make a difference with the guests that are coming in? And the two biggest discussions I'm hearing are the welcoming and departure. So there's no surprises. So the communication piece of just making sure that the guests know what to expect, just like if you were going to a luxury brand. Again, it's just, it's the fundamentals of keeping things really straightforward and transparent, but at the same time, really personalizing that experience for the guest. And the second area that I've been hearing quite a bit is the safety and and cleanliness, of keeping their properties up and going. And there's so much resources out there. I mean, you don't have to be a luxury brand to create a luxury service, but at the same time, I think that you want to hit the touch points that are important to your guests, to the market or to the guests that you are targeting. I mean, there are when I was working with many different brands, especially in the luxury brand industry. Not every guest is going to be a perfect guest for your location. So if you have other brands to turn them to, obviously you would want to promote that, because you want to make sure it's not only just a fit for you, but it's certainly an experience that the guest is going to have with your brand, and it's a perfect match.
Yeah, that's some good insight there. Yeah, I mean, anybody who's ever worked at the front desk and experienced a low point in occupancy, and perhaps you start selling rooms on some of the OTAs at a much lower rate than what you would typically would, you can see very quickly that all of a sudden there's guests in your hotel that normally wouldn't stay there because the rate is the barrier. And what I've seen in my experience is that what a lot of properties will do is they'll drop the rate. It'll bring in guests that aren't their typical demographic, but it's your opportunity to stay at this luxury hotel for a lower rate. So you go and do it. But everything within the hotel is still priced at what it normally is. So, breakfast is still $35 or $40 and parking's still $50 or $60 and charge for internet. And there's like all of these like little things that normally nobody even bats an eye at. But because you've got a different demographic in the hotel, because you dropped your rate, you've got this whole new set of potential challenges to deal with that need to be talked about internally to know, like, okay, so we're selling our rooms at this, but now suddenly breakfast for two is more expensive than what it costs to stay at the hotel. You really have to think about how you're going to engage those guests, and even like operationally, are you going to lower your prices on all of these other items? Are you going to remove services within the hotel? Because I think you do your brand and you do your hotel and your employees and your guests, like four stakeholders, a disservice by just arbitrarily dropping your rate to increase your occupancy. Meanwhile, you can go back and take a look at all of the negative reviews that will probably pop up because you're not servicing the people that are in the hotel in the way that they want to be served. That's, I'll get off my soapbox now, but it's definitely something to think about. It
definitely is, Adam. And it's so important. I think, creating a balance and not always discounting your rate is the solution. I mean, there's so many other important factors when you're having a guest stay at your property. You need to look at what's important for them and then what's important to your brand, and then staying in your lane.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Robert, this is a great conversation. I think that we've got a lot of people coming in back into the industry now who are trying to figure out where do we go from here. And conversations like this, I think, help guide the way a little bit. It clears the path. If anybody wants to get a hold of you or learn a little bit more about what you're doing, what's a good place for
Sure, Adam. The best way to reach me, you'll always find me on LinkedIn. So you just type in my name, Robert Reitknecht. And I do have a website. It's robertreitknecht.com. You can find me there, and I have articles and trade magazines I've written to, and just recently been on a committee or been approached to be on a committee for a luxury association. So exciting news to come about that, and I look forward to engaging with anyone that's looking for support.
Yeah, sounds great. I'll link to everything in the show notes if anybody wants to find it. Just scroll right down. Robert, thanks again for being here.
You're very welcome. Thanks, Adam.